From 2001 to 2005, an obscure team within the United States Department of Energy conducted a covert operation to check and recheck that nobody had planted a nuclear bomb in New York City. That team was NEST, the Nuclear Emergency Support Team, acting on a post-9/11 CIA tip that some terrorists might have scored a nuke from the former USSR and planned to detonate it in New York. In response, NEST identified over 900 plausible locations one might hide a secondhand nuke in the Big Apple, and scoured them inch by inch with sodium iodide radiation detectors and helium-3 based neutron detectors. When they finished one, they went on to the next. When they finished the list, they went back to the beginning, and so on for 4 years. This was called Operation Radiant Angel, and the weirdest part is, it wasn't that weird. The Nuclear Emergency Support Team has, for 50 years now, assessed, handled, and quashed every potential nuclear threat in the country. From terrorism to accidents to, and this is 100% real, puddles of radioactive pee in parking lots. But how do they do it? And what are all these maps about? And what does it all have to do with a fake terrorist called Captain Midnight? Let's start with that last one. In 1974, a mysterious figure by the name of Captain Midnight said he would nuke Boston if he wasn't given $200,000. A terrifying ultimatum and a tellingly low price point. Poor Boston. Cappy Midnight knew they'd let him bury the place if he asked for a full $250,000. Now, this turned out to be a hoax, but nevertheless, the response was a mess. Scientists sent to the scene to check for radioactive material arrived at different airports from their equipment, and they didn't even have a drill to install it all. Recognizing that a non-apocalyptic flop is still a flop, President Ford went about creating a team that could respond to future threats competently, and lo, the group we know as NEST was born. For most nesters, this is a side gig. They work in other areas of the federal government and volunteer some of their time to responding to, quote, nuclear incidents. Some of these people are law enforcement or regulators, some work in the military or communications, and a lot of them are scientists. Though, as one article I read was quick to note, they are not all nerds, but a lot of them are. And this pack of mostly nerds doesn't just respond when Captain Midnight strikes, they're also on the lookout for nuclear shenanigans at just about any major event in the US. Think the Thanksgiving parade, the Democratic and Republican National Conventions, the Boston Marathon, the Super Bowl, my birthday party, you know, the big stuff. But how is a nerd to detect a nuclear shenanigan at such an event? Why, with the aerial measuring system, of course. This is a special Weshel fleet of 3 special Weshel flying things. Okay, sorry, can't help myself. It's 3 Beechcraft BN-350 extended range planes and 2 Augusta Westland 139 helicopters, all tricked out with special Weshel radiation detection systems, all painted this intentionally chill, non-military looking silver and blue in the name of not freaking people the out when they roll up. Their aircraft fly under the call sign Flynet, and the FAA gives them special priority in US airspace. A few weeks before a major event, they'll fly in a grid pattern about 150 feet or 46 meters above the host site and create maps of the background radiation that's usually there, which can come naturally and non-threateningly from things like the granite in the ground, the stadium itself, and in the case of this red hot spot, the Residence Inn, or the nuclear pharmacy next door. Who's to say? These maps were created for MetLife Stadium, home of the New York Jets and Giants, ahead of it hosting the Super Bowl in 2014. With the background radiation around MetLife mapped, the same planes and copters could fly their equipment over the site again on the day of the Super Bowl and see if there were any new radioactive hotspots to be concerned about. Fortunately, the only 5-alarm meltdown at MetLife that day was the Denver Broncos offensive line. Am I right? Really, am I? Neither I or my writers fully understand football, and frankly, we're scared. Mass gatherings aren't the only thing NEST keeps their collective nerdy eye on, though. They also monitor all containerized cargo passing through US land ports and 99% of container cargo going through ports on ships. What's that 1%? I don't know, but I'm sure it's fine. Post 9/11, around the same time they were combing New York for Operation Radiant Angel, the US set up radiation detectors at shipping ports around the world, including in Sri Lanka. In 2005, a detector showed something concerning. Neutron count in one container going up while the gamma count went down, which can signal either absolutely nothing or the presence of a plutonium bomb. By the time NEST heard about it, the container was on one of 6 ships that had already left Sri Lanka. So let's take a look at 5 of its potential locations. 2 ships headed to New York, 2 headed to Hamburg, and 1 headed to Mumbai. The US sent one Nest team to Europe and one to the East Coast to intercept these ships before they reached port. Those searches turned up no plutonium bomb, but also no other explanation for the alarm, so they asked the Indian authorities to thoroughly re-examine the ship headed to Mumbai. There, they found the culprit, an old thing used to map underground boreholes that can cause the same reading as a plutonium bomb but can't reduce the city to ash. Mission accomplished. Outside of the things they monitor, Nest can be dispatched for just about any concerning radioactive reading. Oopsie daisy in the American arms stockpile? Nest is on the case. Reactor meltdown in Fukushima? Nest is on the case. Citizen reports weird sonar readings near the approximate resting place of a lost Mark 15 thermonuclear bomb that fell in the water near Georgia in a plane crash 57 years earlier. Nest is on the case, though still nobody found it. Radioactive puddle in a parking lot? Nest is on the case, where they discovered the aforementioned radioactive piece seemingly left by a medical patient who had received radiation treatment. Their 7-person, full-time search response team can deploy anywhere in about 4 hours, and with time, they can deploy up to 600 people to a single location to partner with local investigators. If they find a device, they begin something called the EOD, or Explosive Ordnance Disposal Procedure, meaning that if they need to neutralize a nuclear threat before 5 p.m., they need to EOD by EOD. They begin by stabilizing the device, basically a process that delays anything it does to buy Nest more time to figure out its inner workings, communicate with labs, and get the thing disposed of. Once stabilized, the experts figure out what fail-safes and booby traps might be built in, as well as how to handle the explosive itself. This process is called defeating the weapon, which can either mean disarming it or blowing it up somewhere it won't bother anyone. And even this isn't the full extent of what Nest gets up to. They have an accident response team that deals with it when the US does something dumb with our own nukes. Their Radiation Emergency Assistance Center/training site treats people for radiation effects, and they work with the Department of Homeland Security on an initiative called Securing the Cities, which sets up agencies in these 13 major cities to do radiological monitoring on their own. Though a lot of the time, they just find cancer patients. Which, I don't know if any of my viewers have tickets to the Super Bowl and are getting cancer treatment, but if that's you legitimately should get a note from your doctor explaining why you might set off a bomb detector. Just one of those things they don't really tell you about cancer. All this, as you can imagine, keeps Nest awfully busy, even though they're almost entirely part-time volunteers. Just remember, you and Nest have the same number of hours in the day, so be like them and get on the grind. Just kidding, please watch 40 more YouTube videos, preferably mine. It would really mean the world to me. Thanks. You know what else would really mean the world to me? If you checked out this video's sponsor, Ground News. It's a platform that makes it easy to compare news sources and read between the lines of media bias, because being informed is all well and good, but you're best off knowing who's informing you. When you watch Half as Interesting, you know your information is coming from some liberal arts major who's had to learn a lot about nukes for this job. But what about when you see a story about Mark Zuckerberg trying to get nukes? Or nuclear power plants, that is. With Ground News, you can see which outlets are covering that story, who owns them, and how much they care about getting the facts straight. You can also see their biases and how they're shaping the story. For example, stories on the left tend to highlight nuclear energy as an environmentally friendly way for Meta to meet the energy demands of all their AI stuff, while right-leaning sources don't mention the environmental concern as much as the sheer cost-effectiveness that might come with using nuclear power. Ground News gives you all that information at a glance, making it easy to spot and sift through biases on whatever story you come across. If that sounds worthwhile to you, and spoiler, it is, head to ground.news/halfasinteresting or click the link in the description this month to get 50% off a Vantage subscription. It's their biggest discount of the year, so there's truly no better time to support an independent platform making the media landscape more transparent.